comments, thoughts, and I know, so there's a couple questions that I want you to ask. So if I don't hear them, I'm going to ask them for you, and I'm going to answer them too. Okay. Question, yes.
Hi, Chris.
Hey.
I don't know if you remember me, but you did this at our leadership training
Okay.
last month, and I asked a lot of questions. So
Yes,
one question I had last time that I now know the answer, but maybe other people might need to know, like how long had your people needed to be enslaved in California? I know the answer now, but then also to get certain protections in California now, like community college, or any other thing, you have to show proof of residency for like 2 years. So does the plan address how long you need to be a resident of California at the time if the bill is passed? Thank you.
Good question. So the questions again are: one, you have to have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in this country by this country. But does that mean that your ancestor has to have been enslaved in California? Right? That's the first part of the question. So the answer is no. As long as you have at least one ancestor who was enslaved somewhere in these United States. So I told y'all earlier, y'all can hear it already, I got a New York accent, I come from New York. My ancestors were enslaved in Georgia, most of them. I live in California now. I will still be eligible because I have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in this country, by this country. So your ancestors don't have to have been enslaved in the state of California. They just have to have been enslaved somewhere in what we call these United States. And the second part of the second part of your question. So the state task force decided, I think it was last month, that you have to be a California resident. I don't remember if they said for how long. So I have to get back to you on that. But that will definitely, so the answer to your question is yes, that will definitely be in the plan. In the plan, it will say exactly for how long you will have had to be a California resident. They actually talked a lot about this, and Kim, you remember this at the last hearing. They were going back and forth about, well, you know, they said something like, well, you know, to qualify for in-state tuition at the UC system, you have to have this sort of time in California. So maybe we should use that. When somebody else in task force said, well, no, as long as you're here for like 9 months, they start taking taxes out of your check. So then it should be that. And some people was like, well, no, you know, it should be, you know, how long you have, you know, how long you need to get a driver's license, etc. So they were talking a lot about it. I don't remember exactly what they finalized though. I do remember that they did say that you have to be a current California resident, and that will definitely be in the plan. Yes, sir.
I understand that you're trying to do the reparations thing. How does that apply to getting rid of or eliminating completely the 13th Amendment? Because if they still say we can be slaves if we go to jail, another law will come up and just put us in jail. So you're still a slave. So.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And so the question is, how does reparations matter to what we call the 13th Amendment? The 13th Amendment, so I didn't say the name, I didn't say this by that name earlier, but when I talked earlier about how you can be enslaved if you're punished for a crime, that California has something that says that. What California has is a version of what our national government has in the 13th Amendment. So our 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution has that same comma exception in it too. That's why nationally, really anywhere you go, if you're in any federal prisons, you can also be forced to work too. You can be enslaved in any federal prisons too. California has a state version of that. Our national government has a national version of that. What we're working on also right now is taking that exception out of our state constitution. That's something that we're working on right now. There's a bill right now called the End Slavery California Act that would actually change that. I expect that we will have that done probably at the same time that we have a state reparations task force law signed. That End Slavery in California Act has to go to the voters. So we do basic political education at the coalition. I got to give you a little taste of it right now. So some things, the people that we vote for, they could do. They could make laws, they could do them. They don't need us to say anything about it. Some things have to come to us to decide on. Every 4 years, every 2 years, 4 years, we see stuff called prop number this and prop number that and prop number blah, blah, blah. That's short for ballot proposition. Ballot propositions are things that the voters of California have to say yes or no to, and those things are usually changes to our state constitution. Usually, in order to change our state constitution, which is different than the laws. I'll say that again. The constitution of our state is different than the laws. The Constitution controls the laws. You can't make laws that go against the Constitution. Otherwise, we call it unconstitutional, and the law has to go. So, some things we have to do to change our Constitution have to come to the people of California. The End Slavery in California Act, the change to the state constitution that gets rid of that exception that allows slavery right now, that will be, if we're successful, that will be a decision for you voters in the 2024 elections, in the November 2024 elections. So, I think we all want, I can't speak for you, but I think you want to end current slavery. I hope you want to end current slavery going on right now in our state prisons. So we expect that there will be an opportunity for us to do that at the same time that the state actually has a state reparations task force law that will be signed, I expect, in 2024. Yes, ma'am.
A question. So, since California is the first state, you said.
Yes.
Are other states reaching out to us to see, to you guys to see, well, how do we start this in our state? And will it be standardized by state? Because people say, well, California got this, how come Georgia didn't get this thing? How will that go? And then my next question, if there's a federal task force and does all that, how's that gonna, will they say, well, you already got something in California, so we're not, so I don't know, that's just what I was thinking.
Those are great questions. No, I love it. So the question is, California is the first state to do this. What about the other states? Are states working with each other? And also, when, I'm gonna say, when the national government does something, after seeing what the states do, will they say, well, y'all got something in California, so y'all can't get some of this national money too? Great questions. One of the things that we help write into the state of California reparations law, it's like the last paragraph or two. There was two things that Secretary Weber liked that we said, and then she put into the law. The first thing was what I said earlier about special consideration for those who are descendants of U.S. slavery, so targeting the descendants of U.S. slavery. The second thing is something in the end that says something like, I'm going to summarize it here, it says something like, just because California is doing this, don't mean the national government is off the hook. It says something like that. It says, what California does is not an excuse for the national government to not do nothing. One thing that we were very, and still are, very focused on making sure that doesn't happen is the national government see what we're doing and either do what you said might happen or could happen, or say, we shouldn't do nothing because this is a state issue now. Let the states do it now. Federal government, we don't have nothing to do with this. So that's partly why we helped write that part in the law to tell the federal government, just because we're doing this, you are still responsible federally. But to your first question though, the answer is yes, there's talking between the states. It is happening mostly though between the grassroots community organizers, the grassroots people who have been fighting for this for the past 4 years. I didn't say this to start, but we just regular people. We're not professional, political people. We all got jobs. I had to take off work yesterday to do those 2 reparations events. We just regular people. What the government is responding to is what the regular people want. So right now, the answer to your question, the first question is yes, absolutely right, or yes, the people are talking across states. And there's something, I think, better going on than standardizing stuff. There's states that are learning from what we're doing and saying, okay, this is what they did great, we want to do it, and this is what they did that's not so great, we don't want to do that. So they actually building better stuff. That's what's supposed to happen. We didn't get everything perfect, and we're not going to get everything perfect. So the other states are saying, okay, we're going to build off what they did and use this piece and then do this differently, but do it the same way this time. So there's learning going on between the states. There's no other state right now that has a state reparations task force. I would say the closest state, or the state to keep an eye on, is the state of New York. That's the state to keep an eye on. That will probably be the next state to do something serious like what we've done here. And I'll come to you right next. The second part of your question is, will the national government say, all right, well, we got to do something, but let's reduce your reparations payment by the amount that you got from California. So if we do a national program, and let's say it's $1 million per descendant of U.S. slave, I'm just throwing them out there. That would be nice, but I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, maybe it should be more, but just throwing it out there. But let's say the national government says $1 million per descendant of U.S. slavery, just for the compensation part, right? There's 5 parts of it. But just for the first part, let's say that compensation is $1 million. Will the federal government say, all right, well, you got the $1 million from the national government, but you also in 2024 you got $500,000 from California. So we're gonna subtract the $500,000 from the million, and we're gonna just give you $500,000. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were people who tried to do that. Something that we'll have to keep an eye on and make sure that that doesn't happen. So I can't say what will happen or won't happen, but you're absolutely right. I expect there to be all kind of stuff to try to not pay as much as you should be paying. Hope that answers.
No, good, thank you.
Go to you, ma'am, and then I'll go back over. Go to you and you.
Sure. First of all, I just have to say, the work that you guys are doing, I know it's not just you, you have a whole team of people, it's just been outstanding, because I've been finding out about this just by, reading and looking at articles and things online, so
Thank you.
you guys are doing a great job. I just wanted to ask a question about, so is there any easy way, or any way, easy or not, to find out, because I've never tried to do this, to find out where my line has there been enslaved?
Yeah.
That's my first question.
I'm gonna take the first question first, and I'll come back to you, and I'm gonna go to you over here, and I'll go back to the back. So this is important. This is a very important question. The short answer is, it's not hard to know if you're a descendant of U.S. slavery. That's the short answer. The other part to that answer is, we don't know yet what type of proof standards will be required. We don't know yet. Put your hand up if you think you are a descendant of U.S. slavery, if you think you have at least one. Okay, a lot of people. How do you know? Ancestry, conversations, photos, history, right? Talking to the elders, right? Stories my grandmother told me, and my mother told me about how we came from Georgia and right? To me, that would be enough, but we don't have the details yet about what specific standards of demonstration we will need. The State Reparations Task Force, when they were making this decision, during the hearing when they was about to decide which way to go, they said, we got to hear from the people who actually do this for a living. So they brought in, I think, 6 or 7 genealogists. So there's people who do something called genealogy, right? They brought 6 or 7 genealogists to the State Reparations Task Force and asked them, if we decide to do this way, how hard is this going to be for people? How easy is this going to be for people? And they said, for most people, it's going to be relatively simple depending on how you design it. If you design it the right way, it can be relatively simple. There are going to be people who are going to need some extra help. Our brothers and sisters in the child welfare system, our brothers and sisters in the foster care system, our brothers and sisters unhoused outside, our brothers and sisters that went through the penitentiary. Some of our people are going to need more help. What the genealogist also said is, y'all should pay for this for people. Don't have people pay for this themselves. And y'all should pay people to do the work for people to help them trace their ancestry. They also said, create a part of our state whose job it is just to do that. And the State Reparations Task Force took that idea and said, all right, we are already, even though the final plan ain't out yet, the State Reparations Task Force said, we are already going to recommend something called CAFA, C-A-A-F-A, CAFA, California African American Freedmen Agency. In this agency, the State Reparations Task Force says, create something called the Office of Genealogy. This will be part of, and I expect they will have to be working this through the genealogy associations and the people who actually do this for a living. But part of what this new part of our state will do will help people do exactly what you said. I will say one more thing on this question. I'll take a second question. I'll go here, here, and then here. I was talking to one of the genealogists last week. I'm on a panel actually with the California Historical Society a couple weeks from now. One of the panelists is a genealogist named Nika Smith. She is somebody she's a dope genealogist. She's actually, so y'all heard of Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? The Tulsa Race Massacre. Y'all know some of those folks are still living. Right. I think there's 4 living descendants. There's 2 twins, and then there's 2 other folks. They are 100 and something years old plus each one of them. Okay? God bless them for living that long. They're fighting right now for their reparations right now. The Tulsa folks actually came to the State Reparations Task Force in California to talk about what they do. Okay? Not the descendants themselves, but the people who are working for them. They're going through a process right now working to identify the descendants of that Tulsa race massacre. Nika Smith is one of the people who's helping them do that. So I was talking to Nika last weekend, and she was, we was having like a pre-panel talk. And she said something that I want to level with y'all. I say this every time, just take off the titles, take off the hats. Let's just talk as regular people. Let's just talk as real people right now. This ain't gonna be as easy as we think it is. It's not gonna be as easy as I think we think it is for a couple reasons. But the most important reason is, this is what Nika brought to me. She said, you're not just learning whether or not you had an enslaved ancestor. You're learning about your people's history. You're learning about your family's history. That means you opening up some stuff that your family members may have wanted to keep closed. I'm gonna give y'all a personal example. I told Nika, listen, through this process, I started living for my father. I never met my pops. I met my pops once. And I was about 4, I was told. Okay? I don't really remember. So through this reparations process, I started asking my mother, I want to know about my genealogy. So I called my mom's last year. I said, can you tell me more about my father? I never really asked about it. I could tell immediately she had some stuff. She wasn't really ready to, she had some energy, right? And you can imagine that times 2 million, which is what the number of descendants we think are in California, about 2 million of us. So you can imagine that that's gonna be taking some knots and untwisting some knots. That's gonna be a part of this process too. And so the question Nika had for me was, do you want some government agent doing that for you? Do you want some person deciding whether or not your grandmother was telling you a lie when she said this is your granddaddy, but maybe that is not really your granddaddy? Or maybe the name on the birth certificate really ain't the person? And I said, Nika, I didn't even think about that. So it's not just gonna be give me a birth certificate, give me a census record before this year, and you in. It's gonna be a healthy process. I appreciated the conversation I had with my mother, because We never had this conversation. And it actually brought us closer. Now she's sending me all kind of pictures of people I never met before and giving me names of people. But so it's actually repairing now too. So that's actually part of what this process is too. Okay, I'll take your next question, here, here, and here.
Okay, so the next question was, just in terms of the task force and the people that are kind of working from the legislative side, are they truly and genuinely interested in making this happen? Because we all know that there's a major effort of, in fact, they're trying to ban books and do all kinds of things.
Yeah, so the question is, are we going to have the kind of political support from the task force members and really the state government to actually do this? I mean, I told you earlier, the bill that we had to give you, the voters, the choice and chance to take slavery out of our state constitution failed last year in the state senate. We couldn't get 26 state senators to give you the chance last year to take slavery out of our state constitution. So next year we come in with actual reparations bills. If we couldn't take slavery out of the state constitution, how realistic is it that we can actually get a reparations bill done? So on the state task force, again, I mentioned there's 9 people. The chair is Camilla Moore. By the way, each one of you will have, before you leave, a card with each one of these people's names and faces on. I think my brother's passing them around now. Okay. So the chair is Camilla Moore, 30-year-old black woman, attorney. I mean, I think it says a lot that we have a chair who's a 30-year-old millennial, amazing superstar. Okay. Vice chair is Dr. Amos Brown. Some of you might know Dr. Brown from the Bay Area. He was actually one of Dr. Martin Luther King's 16 students. He literally was taught by Dr. Martin Luther King. Also on the task force, and this is to your question, is State Senator Stephen Bradford and State Assembly Member Reginald Jones Sawyer, or Reggie Jones Sawyer. So there are members of the state of California legislature on the State Reparations Task Force now. They're actually the ones who are going to most likely draft the reparations legislation. Since they're on the State Reparations Task Force, they're probably going to have the job of actually creating the state reparations legislation that's going to come out next year. So the answer to your question though is yes. I believe every single one of the people on the task force, especially the legislators, are committed to making this actually real. The thing will be to make sure that we get the other members of the state legislature. There's a reparations equation or formula that I tell folks. It's 21 plus 41 plus 1. 21 plus 41 plus 1. To do reparations legislation next year, we need 21 state senators to say yes, 41 state assembly members to say yes, and 1 governor to say yes. That is the math we need next year. So there's 2, we have 2 right now. Okay? We have 1 state senator because he's on the task force, and we have 1 state assembly member because he's on the task force. Our job is to make sure that we get to the 21 plus 41 plus 1. I think we can do it. I'll go here, yes ma'am, and then I'll come here, and then, yes.
My first question, she kind of covered it
Okay.
with the descendants, that area. My second question, and you may have covered this already, and I apologize if you have. What's being done in San Francisco? Are we piggying off of that? Are we a part of that? Or, help me out.
Oh, that's a dope question too. Y'all got the best question. So it's important to understand this. The state of California is doing something for the whole state. And then different cities in California are doing their own thing too. So San Francisco is an example of a city in California that's doing its own thing just for San Francisco residents. San Francisco, and by the way, the event I was at last night was in San Francisco. The vice chair of the San Francisco Reparations Commission was at that event with us. She was on the panel with me. So the city of San Francisco is doing something specifically for city of San Francisco residents. Then there's something at the state level, a state reparations task force that's doing something for the whole state. What you've been hearing about today is just the state level stuff. Yeah.
So that I understand it, this for the state level, is it descendants of slavery from California or from nationwide?
Good question. I really don't need the mic, but I'm gonna do the mic because the cameras is there. So, in California, at the state level, to be eligible, you have to be a California resident and someone who has at least one ancestor who was enslaved anywhere in the United States. So it doesn't just have to be California. Anywhere in the United States. Again, my folks were enslaved in Georgia. I'm a California resident. I'm in.
North Carolina.
There you go. There you go. All right, let me go. Can I go here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we have 5.
Okay, I'll do 30-second answers. Lightning round.
Okay, I want to go back to this young lady's first question. I've already chased my family history back in 1996 all the way to the boat ride, depends on how far you want to dig. Now, the state, if they haven't already hired, they were advertising database specialists, and if they haven't already gotten 2 contracts with the best genealogy companies in this country, one is the Mormon people. Between 1850 and 1870, they didn't record slaves on the census. So they put our first name in the slave trade book. If they hit a block, you qualify. So yeah, that's all I want to answer the first question.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Repeat what she said.
So she said that she's able to trace her ancestry and to all the way to the actual
Boat ride.
To the-
But you guys
yes,
don't
to
have
the
to
ship.
do that. The state is hiring people to do that trace for you. They know all of us can't find our people. They sold us to different breakup families.
Right.
So they got you. Don't worry about that. They got you.
Yeah, it is, and that's a great point. I'll say this in 15 seconds, maybe. There is, so again, we don't have the exact details about what records will be needed, but we expect that they will design a program that is simple enough that all of the descendants get something, get their reparations. My goal is to make sure that 100% of the descendants who live in California get reparations. And again, we're waiting for the state to tell us exactly what type of records, etc. All right, I think I had in the back, then I'll go back to you, brother, and then I think that's it.
No, go to the brother, because I'll close it out.
Okay, yes, sir.
The misconception is that everybody who's black or look like that they're black, their family, far back as you can go, were slaves. That's not true. Everybody that's black over here their history doesn't go back to slavery. They were not slaves.
That is
So because you black, you think you got something coming, you don't.
that's an important point, and we gotta make that very clear, okay? And it's probably the most important point I think we're gonna make today. Not everybody who says they're black will be eligible for reparations in California. You have to have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in this country by this country. That's the real criteria. Do you have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in this country by this country? So across the country and in California too, about 80 to 90% of anybody who calls themselves black is also a descendant of U.S. slavery. But that's 80 to 90%, so that means there's 10 to 20% who are not. Those are our brothers and sisters, we love them, from other parts of the world who chose to come here. Much love. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for adding to the richness of our culture. We love you, we appreciate you. Actually, the member of the State Reparations Task Force who introduced the idea to make the eligibility specifically for the descendants of U.S. slavery is a Jamaican American brother. He said, this ain't for me. I'm not going to get this. I want my African American brothers who are descendants of U.S. slavery to get this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we done? All right, yeah, I guess we're done. Thank you so much.
And Chris, first of all, and then, Chris broke down that there were 5 parts of the reparation. So some of our Afro-Latina, African brothers and sisters may benefit from it secondhand by the way they change policies and laws of treating black people in America.
Right.
But maybe not the compensation and all of that other tangible things. But we do need significant reform on how they treat us even today. We want reparations from the free labor of our ancestors, but we don't want them to also say, well, we gave you some money, so we still can kill you down in the street, So, we're gonna, that's why we should consider signing up for our newsletter. If you go to NAACPSAC.com, you can become a member. You can also join our newsletter to see what we're doing in the community. And I just wanted to say, I trace my ancestors back. I think the oldest is 1810. It's what I do in my free time. And yes, you will open up a lot of wounds because the firewall for me is knowing that somebody was sexually assaulted at that time and that person was, maybe listed as a wife, but they were not a wife. But then it's just like, I found you. I was looking for you and I found you. So it's also some good things that come from tracing your genealogy, especially if you live a life to try to make your ancestors proud. I know your name and I want to thank you for laying the foundation, but this is for you. This is for you. Chris, we really appreciate all your work. I know you said you're a regular person, but Superman was a regular person when he didn't have anything for it. Okay?
So the State Reparations Task Force, the 9 people, they actually come into Sacramento next week. So they have public hearings, so they have to do public hearings. There only are 13 public hearings here in Sacramento, next Friday and next Saturday. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., both days. Public comment is the first hour of each day. It's at the Byron Sher Auditorium on 1001 I Street. It's on those cards you got, you can find all the info, and I'm sure they have the list.
Well, let me ask you a question, Chris. For people who may need maybe a Zoom option or a virtual, is that something that's going to be where they can go to the website or something like that?
Yes, it'll be streamed live on YouTube also. It'll be streaming live on YouTube. Actually, our YouTube live streamers are here. Ken and Moya in the back. They stream all of the California Reparations Task Force hearings live on YouTube at their YouTube channel. It's called ETMD Group. All the cards that you have that info. So you can watch it on YouTube and comment in the chat and watch it with all of us if you can make it in person.
Thank you. At 12:15, we have a Know Your Rights seminar. I believe it's in this room at 1:15. So go and support Black businesses and be back to know your rights. Thank you.